Her message arrived at 2:14 a.m. Forget me. And then, silence. The words pulsed on the screen like a warning from something that already knew the ending. When did the night start watching back? The house had been quiet for days, but in that moment, the air felt crowded, as if every wall remembered something I didn't. I stared into the rearview mirror, engine idling, breath fogging the glass, and saw her car behind me, a pale blue sedan, headlights dim, engine humming like a secret. But as I blinked, the reflection folded in on itself, and the car was gone, not driving away, not fading, just gone. The night looked clean, too clean, like the world had been edited. I whispered her name, but the sound didn't fit in my mouth anymore. I kept driving, the phone still glowing beside me, the message still open, the house sitting behind miles of dark road, silent, waiting, pretending nothing had ever happened. The house looked smaller when I came back, as if it had exhaled after being caught holding its breath too long. The porch light flickered, one short burst, every few seconds, painting the gravel in ghostly rhythm. I hesitated before unlocking the door. Something about the silence didn't fit, like it had been arranged for me. Inside, the air was wrong. My plants had grown taller. The clock had stopped at 2:14, and a faint hum came from upstairs where no light burned. Every framed photo seemed a fraction tilted, every shadow deeper than before. My suitcase thudded against the floor and echoed too long, like the house was listening. Somewhere near the hallway mirror, something shifted, but when I turned, nothing waited there. Only my own reflection, slightly delayed, smiling when I wasn't. She wiped the dust from the hallway mirror, expecting her reflection to greet her with that tired traveler's look. But it didn't. It blinked too late. It smiled too long. She leaned closer, tracing the edge of the glass with her finger, feeling a chill pulse through it like blood under skin. Behind the reflection, something dim moved. A figure. Or maybe just a thought. But when she turned, the hall was empty again. The air grew heavier, denser, as if sound couldn't escape. The mirror fogged slightly, as though it were breathing. She whispered her own name just to remember what it sounded like, but the echo that came back wasn't hers. It said it slower. It said it wrong. She moved to the living room, phone in hand, desperate for signal. The storm outside had thickened. Thunder rolled like slow applause. Static crackled through the phone's speaker. Then a whisper threaded through it. Soft, careful, familiar. Forget me. The same voice, but distant, almost kind. Her heart pressed against her ribs, begging for reason. The lights dimmed until only the television screen glowed faintly blue, even though it was unplugged. In its reflection, she saw movement. Someone walking through the upstairs hallway, then gone. She gripped the edge of the table until her knuckles turned white, waiting for the house to exhale again, waiting for it to admit it wasn't empty. The first step creaked like a question. The second answered with a groan. She climbed slowly, feeling the air shift heavier with every stair, the sound of rain muffled as if the world beyond the house had moved further away. Halfway up, she paused. There was breathing above her. Not wind, not pipes, breathing, she whispered. Who's there? And the sound came back as footsteps, measured, unhurried, descending toward her, though she could see nothing in the shadows. Her pulse rose with the rhythm of the unseen steps until they stopped just one stair above. Then a whisper, inches from her ear. Her own voice saying, "You shouldn't have come back." Morning never truly arrived. Only a thinner shade of night slipped through the curtains. She wandered through the hall, drawn toward a door she didn't remember. It sat between two familiar rooms, like it had always been there, quietly patient, waiting for her to notice. The handle was cold, smoother than metal should feel, almost damp. She pressed her ear against it and heard nothing. Until she did. A soft scraping, a rhythm too human to be rats or wind. Her hand hesitated, then turned the knob, but it refused to move, as though something on the other side held it shut. For a heartbeat, she thought she heard someone whisper her name from behind the wood, followed by a faint tapping. Once, twice, matching the pulse in her wrist. The living room's gallery wall should have been harmless. Frozen smiles, captured sunlight, proof that time once behaved. But one frame was wrong. In the photo, she and the house sitter stood side by side, smiling. Only now, the sitter's eyes were gone, replaced with empty blur, and the background showed something else. A version of the house she didn't recognize. Windows boarded, sky colorless. She reached for the frame and found it warm, as if someone had held it moments ago. Beneath the glass, faint condensation formed a single print, smudged yet fresh. She stepped back, the photo tilting slightly, and realized every other frame now leaned toward it, like witnesses bowing to a secret. She opened the curtains in the upstairs bedroom, expecting the old oak tree, the gravel path, the road leading home. But outside, there was no world, only a gray expanse shifting faintly, like breathing fog. She blinked hard, rubbed her eyes, yet the horizon never returned. She pressed her hand against the glass and felt warmth radiating from it, pulsing once, then fading. The reflection staring back at her wasn't her posture. It leaned forward when she hadn't moved lips. She didn't move. She stumbled backward, heart pounding as the glass faintly trembled with the shape of someone knocking from the other side. The journal sat on her nightstand where she never left it. Brown leather cover, tied with frayed ribbon, pages warped by humidity. She opened it to find her own handwriting. But the entries weren't memories. They were predictions. Dates she hadn't lived yet. Words she hadn't written but recognized. November 4th, she sees herself standing behind her reflection. Her throat tightened. The next line bled through the paper as if freshly inked. November 5th, she opens the locked door. She slammed the book shut, but the scent of ink clung to the air like breath. It came just as she began to breathe again. 3 knocks, slow and deliberate, from the locked door downstairs. Not thunder, not the house settling, but knuckles. She froze mid-step, listening as silence followed, heavy as water. Then, 3 more. The same rhythm she'd heard against her heartbeat before. She reached for the phone, but it flickered to black, its reflection showing movement behind her when she was still. The final knock shook the floorboards, and then a voice, clear, certain, and too close. "You forgot me." She didn't touch it. Not really. The handle moved on its own, slow, deliberate, like the door was breathing through metal lungs. Each rotation groaned through the hall, blending with her pulse. She stepped back, one hand clutching the banister, trying to remember if she'd ever seen this door open before. The air thickened until it felt alive, trembling against her skin. When the latch finally clicked, the sound was gentle, too gentle, and a faint light spilled out, golden and trembling, like sunlight that had been trapped too long. It illuminated the floorboards, dust motes swirling in nervous motion. Something behind that door had been waiting, and now it was awake. The door opened into a small room lined with mirrors, floor to ceiling, every angle showing her from 1,000 distances. At first, all the reflections matched. Then one blinked out of rhythm. She stepped closer, watching that one face linger, lips parting as if to speak. A low hum filled the air, words layered and reversed. Too many voices speaking through her own mouth. The mirrors began to vibrate, rippling faintly like glass under breath. She turned to leave, but every reflection turned toward her instead, their eyes glowing faintly gold. She whispered, "Stop!" But the word came from behind her, not her lips. Her phone buzzed once, screen lighting up her reflection in the mirrors. The message preview read, "I told you not to come back." Her throat closed. She hadn't added the sitter's number to her new phone. The device vibrated again, this time accompanied by a faint echo in the walls. A woman's voice, calm but strained, repeating the same words she read. She lifted her gaze, and one reflection wasn't hers anymore. It was Marla's, smiling faintly, eyes glassy, standing exactly where Evelyn stood but on the other side of the mirror. The phone slipped from her hand and hit the floor, with a small final sound that seemed to end the hum in the air. Marla's image lifted its hand against the mirror, palm flat. Evelyn hesitated, her breath fogging the glass. The surface shimmered, ripples spreading outward like water disturbed. When she finally touched it, the cold seared through her skin, then vanished, replaced by warmth, almost human. Her surroundings darkened. Reflections blurred and fell away, replaced by an empty corridor that wasn't hers. The floor felt damp beneath her bare feet. She turned around and saw the mirror. Only now, Marla stood on this side, staring back at her, alive, blinking, whispering one word. Trade. The light in the mirror snapped out, plunging her into silence. She backed away, but the door she came through was gone. No frame, no outline, only seamless wall. From somewhere behind the plaster she heard the familiar knock. 3 slow taps, then another, answering from the other side. She realized the knocks were in rhythm, calling and answering as though 2 people shared the same heartbeat across the wall. Her reflection flickered faintly back into view, but this time it smiled, Marla's smile, and whispered, "Now forget me." The wall sealed like skin, and Evelyn's scream never reached the air. Silence had changed its texture. It wasn't empty anymore. It was crowded. Every step she took echoed twice, once from her feet and once from somewhere ahead, mimicking her rhythm a half-second late. The hallway stretched impossibly long, walls tightening with every breath. Paint peeled in patterns that resembled faces turned sideways, whispering where her shadow passed. She tried to hum to break the stillness, but the tune came back wrong, too low, too slow. The air felt thicker than breath, pressing on her lungs until she forgot what real quiet sounded like. Then, faintly, a whisper floated from behind her. "You're almost home." She found a single picture frame on the floor, cracked but glowing faintly with reflected light. The photo inside wasn't her. It was Marla, sitting at the kitchen table, hands folded, looking straight at the camera. Behind her stood Evelyn, blurred and unrecognizable, like a shadow caught mid-breath. The photo pulsed once, faintly, like a heartbeat trapped in paper. She turned it over and saw words carved into the wood. "This house keeps what it remembers." The glass cracked beneath her fingers as if reacting to her pulse, and from somewhere distant she heard a chair scrape across the kitchen floor. "Das being ancient word. Cheery." The kitchen was just as she'd left it. Or almost. The dishes were clean, too clean, like they hadn't been used but arranged to appear lived in. The smell of burnt sugar hung faintly in the air. On the counter, a teacup steamed, though no kettle boiled. She stared at it until she saw her reflection ripple on the surface of the tea. Marla's face, smiling faintly, speaking words she couldn't hear. Then the cup slid an inch on its own, leaving a perfect wet circle behind. She turned away, heart shaking her ribs, and saw that the chair at the table was no longer empty. She opened the old cupboard, searching for anything familiar, but found only a small square of glass, propped between dusty jars. Her reflection inside it wasn't aligned. It looked slightly to the left, blinking when she did. The reflection lifted its hand first, touched the inside of the glass, and the cupboard door slammed shut around her fingers. Pain shot up her arm as the reflection grinned. She yanked free, stumbling backward. The cupboard creaked open again. The glass now empty, but the echo of her breathing came from inside it, slow and steady, belonging to someone else. By nightfall, the mirrors had multiplied. Tiny shards of reflection appearing in windows, silverware, puddles on the floor. Each showed her standing still while the world moved around her. She smashed one, but two more caught her image from the fragments. Her face began to blur in them, losing color, gaining stillness. Then in the largest mirror by the stairs, she saw Marla again. Alive, solid, breathing, and realized with a sinking calm that she was the reflection now. Marla turned toward the real room, whispering, "I told you, you shouldn't have come back," as Evelyn's voice echoed from inside the glass, too quiet to be heard outside. She tried to scream, but nothing came out. The air in her throat belonged to someone else now. Every sound she made echoed from a direction she couldn't find. Behind her, beneath the floor, from inside the walls. Her name whispered itself through the rooms in a slow, practiced tone, as if the house had learned how to pronounce it. She ran her hands along the wallpaper, searching for seams, for proof of reality, but the surface pulsed faintly beneath her fingers, like a living thing. The lights flickered once, twice, and for a second, the walls around her inhaled, then exhaled her name again, quieter, more certain. She realized it wasn't calling her. It was remembering her. The old cassette player she'd left in storage sat waiting on the table, a thin layer of dust broken by fresh fingerprints. Its play button was already pressed. From the spinning reels came a faint, distorted hum. Then her own voice filled the room, narrating words she hadn't said yet. It spoke of things happening now, describing her movements exactly as she made them. She steps closer. She doesn't breathe. Her heartbeat quickened, syncing with the warbled rhythm of the tape. Then the voice paused and whispered one more line. "Turn around." Against every instinct, she did. The reflection in the cabinet window wasn't hers anymore. It blinked before she did, smiled when she didn't. Behind it, the faint shape of Marla's outline grew clearer, solidifying with each breath Evelyn took. It was as if the glass had become a doorway, not of entry, but exchange. Her own reflection began to fade, replaced piece by piece. The hands first, then the face, then the eyes, leaving her staring at herself from the wrong side. She lifted her hand and the reflection lifted Marla's. For the first time, she realized only one of them would get to stay. The lights went out in unison. Then came the whispering, layered, overlapping, building into a chorus that sounded like wind through hollow wood. The house spoke in fragments of her own thoughts, words she'd never said aloud but had almost thought. They poured from every vent, every gap in the floorboards, filling the room until the air itself seemed to speak her name again and again. The walls trembled. Her reflection in the window mouthed the words back, perfectly in sync. The last whisper rose above the others, Marla's voice clear among them, soft, pleading, certain. "Stay." When dawn arrived, the world beyond the windows no longer looked real. The fog had settled like glass, and her reflection moved freely behind it. She pressed her palm to the window, and Marla pressed back from the other side, their eyes meeting through the faint shimmer of daylight. The house had gone still, listening. The reflection smiled. Not cruelly, not kindly, and whispered her name one last time. The sound echoed through the empty rooms like an oath being sealed. The window clouded, and only one silhouette remained visible in the light. The house at last knew who it belonged to. The air was different now, heavier, slower, almost reluctant to move. She woke on the living room floor, unsure she'd ever slept. The sun hung outside like a memory of warmth, dim and unmoving. Every corner of the house seemed slightly rearranged. Chairs turned toward walls, curtains drawn halfway as if something had been watching. She rose, body aching, and noticed the sound. Soft, rhythmic breathing that wasn't hers. It came from the walls again, in and out, calm and patient. When she whispered, "Marla," the house exhaled, once, long and tired, and whispered her name back. The wallpaper had started to peel overnight, curling away like something trying to escape. Beneath it, dark stains crawled in delicate patterns, almost like handwriting. She leaned close, heart hammering, and realized they were words written in looping script. She lived here first. The letters pulsed faintly, still damp, bleeding into one another as if newly drawn. She stepped back, hand covering her mouth when the wall shuddered and another line appeared on its own. "Now you do." The floorboards creaked beneath her, whispering agreement, the sound of 1,000 tiny sighs. She passed the hallway mirror again, now webbed with fine cracks. The reflection had depth it shouldn't have, like looking down into deep water. Her shape moved faintly, half a second late, but this time it smiled before she did. She stepped closer. Drawn by curiosity she mistook for courage. The air around the mirror trembled, as if something on the other side was breathing faster. Her reflection raised its hand and pressed it to the glass. The crack spread outward, forming a shape, a doorway waiting to open. She felt warmth against her skin again, and then the faint tug, gentle but certain, pulling her forward. A sound drifted down the staircase. A woman humming softly. A tune she almost recognized. It was the same lullaby from her mother's music box, the one that had gone missing years ago. She followed the melody up the stairs, each note bending slightly out of tune. The air thickened with the scent of rain and old wood. At the landing, she saw the faint outline of a figure sitting on her bed, shoulders still, humming through a voice that wasn't alive anymore. The tune stopped. Silence pressed close, heavy and absolute. Then came the whisper, quiet as breath. "You remember me now." The foundation groaned like a giant stirring from sleep. Walls stretched, floors flexed, doors opened without hands. Every reflection in the house blinked at once. The light flickered between day and night, faster each time, until she couldn't tell which world she stood in. Then, in a rush of cold air, the whispering began again, not calling her this time, but chanting, hundreds of layered voices murmuring her name. She clutched her head, staggering as mirrors rattled and windows pulsed. Finally, the noise stopped. The house inhaled deeply. Somewhere beneath her feet, the floor whispered, "We remember." When the shaking stopped, the house fell into a silence that felt alive. Dust hung midair, frozen, as if the world had forgotten how to move. She stood in the middle of the room, afraid to speak, afraid her voice would make something start again. The mirrors had stopped vibrating, but every surface still held her reflection. Hundreds of versions of her, each with slightly different eyes. She watched one turn its head before she did, watched another blink too soon. The quiet stretched until she could hear her heartbeat trying to escape her chest. Then, softly, one reflection smiled and whispered, "It's your turn now." She moved toward the largest mirror by the stairs, the one that had always watched her longest. The reflection stepped closer too, matching her breath, her pulse, her fear. But when she paused, it kept walking until their palms almost met through the glass. The air shimmered, and warmth bled through the surface, soft but deliberate. Her reflection whispered again, "One of us stays." The glass rippled like water as her fingers sank an inch too deep. Pain bloomed across her skin, bright and electric, and then nothing but light. When she opened her eyes, she wasn't sure which side she was on. Outside, the storm had passed. Morning light touched the fields beyond the windows, soft and clean. The house looked calm again, ordinary. Its breathing finally stilled. In the doorway stood Marla, solid and real, wearing Evelyn's coat, holding Evelyn's keys. Her eyes scanned the room, as though trying to remember its shape. She smiled faintly, testing the air, whispering, "Home." In the mirror's reflection behind her, Evelyn stood, colorless, still watching with eyes that didn't blink. The glass fogged slowly, then cleared, and only Marla remained in the world that could be touched. Marla walked through each room quietly, tracing her fingers along the walls, as though reacquainting herself with old memories. Beneath the paint, faint ridges of words pressed outward, Evelyn's name, repeated again and again. carved deep from the inside. The letters shimmered when her fingers passed over them, whispering softly in the air, like an echo caught between walls. She closed her eyes, letting the hum settle around her, and whispered, "I remember you." Somewhere deep within the plaster, a heartbeat answered once, slow and final. That night, the house settled again, its wood sighing like an old body returning to rest. Marla sat in the living room with the lights off, listening to rain begin once more. Across from her, the mirror reflected only darkness now. No face, no light, no memory. She reached out once, gently, and whispered goodnight to whatever lingered beyond it. Upstairs, one door creaked open by itself, a quiet exhale of memory. Then the sound faded. The reflection never returned. Outside, the storm rolled away, and the house, at last, stopped remembering.